Frank Dalton always woke before the city. By the time the first hint of light touched the water, he was already at the bridge. Same thermos, same old truck parked by the guardrail. The wind off the bay carried that cold salt smell that stuck to everything. Most mornings were the same. He'd lean against the railing, sip his coffee, and listen to the hum of the world waking up. Gulls, engines, the first ferry horn echoing through the fog. He told himself he came for the peace. But peace was never really the point. 10 years ago, he'd stood on this same bridge in the pouring rain, shouting over sirens and wind, trying to reach a man who'd climbed over the edge. He'd been a firefighter then, strong, fast, sure of himself. Until that night. The man slipped. Frank never forgot the sound. A scream swallowed by the river below. Now, every dawn felt like a quiet apology he could never finish. He took another sip of coffee, watching the fog drift low across the water. Some mornings he almost convinced himself it was enough. Just being here. Almost. By 8 o'clock, the bridge was just another stretch of steel and noise. Trucks rolled past, coffee cups rattled in cup holders, and the world went about its business. Frank always left before the traffic built up. He wasn't afraid of people. He just didn't know what to say to them anymore. He drove to the marina, where he did part-time maintenance work. Boats didn't talk, and he liked that. They only needed fixing, patching, making sure they didn't sink. Simple rules. The guys at the dock liked him. Quiet man, good hands, no trouble. They didn't ask questions, and he never mentioned the department or the bridge. The few who knew didn't bring it up. Some losses were better left alone. After work, he'd stop by the diner for dinner. Same stool, same waitress, same half-smile when she poured his coffee. "You're up early as always, Frank," she'd say. He'd nod, like that explained everything. It didn't. That night, the weather forecast said another storm was coming. Wind, rain, the kind that made the bay restless. He turned off the TV and looked out the window toward the faint glow of the bridge in the distance. He told himself he wouldn't go tomorrow, but he already knew he would. The rain started before sunrise. Light at first, then steady, tapping against the windshield of Frank's truck as he pulled into his usual spot near the bridge. He almost turned back. The wipers struggled against the fog and drizzle, and the air smelled of wet asphalt and seaweed. But habits have gravity and is pulled stronger than reason. He got out, thermos in hand, jacket zipped to his chin. The wind bit through the seams, colder than he expected. The bay was restless, dark waves slapping against the pylons far below. Frank leaned on the railing, the same place as always, watching the mist rise off the water. Somewhere in the distance, a gull cried, sharp, lonely. Then he saw it. At first, just a shape through the fog, still, human-sized, standing near the center span. The kind of stillness that doesn't belong on a morning like this. Frank blinked, trying to make sense of it. Someone, maybe a jogger, maybe not. The wind shifted, and the figure didn't move. He felt that old pulse in his chest, the one he thought was gone. Not fear, recognition. The kind of moment when the past doesn't knock. It just walks right back in. Frank moved slowly, careful not to startle the figure. The rain had eased into a mist, hanging thick around the bridge lights. He could see now, a young man, maybe mid-20s, jeans soaked, hoodie clinging to his shoulders. He wasn't moving. Frank stopped a few yards away. "You okay there, son?" he asked, voice steady but gentle. The young man didn't turn. "Yeah," he said after a moment, just thinking. Frank nodded, stepping a little closer. "Bridge ain't the best place for that. It's loud up here. Cold, too." The kid gave a small laugh, short, humorless. "Yeah, guess that's the point." Frank froze, the words cutting through the fog like sirens. He'd heard them before, in another voice, another storm. He took a slow breath. "Listen, I don't want to bother you. Just making sure you're safe. That's all. Safe." The boy looked over his shoulder, pale face, tired eyes. "You don't even know me." Frank met his gaze. "No, but I know what it looks like when someone stops caring." The wind picked up, tugging at the kid's hood. He looked away again, toward the water below. And Frank knew, this morning wasn't like the others. The wind hissed between the bridge cables, carrying the smell of salt and rust. Frank took another slow step forward. The kid didn't back away, but he didn't move closer either. "Got a name," Frank asked. The boy shrugged. Does it matter? Yeah, Frank said quietly. Names make things real. After a pause, the boy muttered, Evan. All right, Evan. Frank kept his tone even. I'm Frank. Evan gave a small nod, eyes fixed on the dark water. You from the city? Born here, Frank said. Worked here. Seen it at its worst and best. Evan's jaw tightened. Then you know it doesn't care about people like us. Frank looked at him for a long moment. Yeah, sometimes it doesn't. But that's not the city's job. That's ours. The kid scoffed. You sound like my old man. Maybe he was right, Frank said. Evan turned sharply. He's not around anymore. Frank didn't ask how. He didn't need to. Some words carried their own silence. He took another step, close enough now to see the tremor in the boy's hands. You don't have to do this, he said softly. Trust me, walking away doesn't fix the pain. It just changes its name. Evan blinked, once, slowly, and for the first time, didn't look down. The rain came back, soft, steady, whispering across the metal beams. Frank could taste it on his lips, cold and familiar. Evan shivered, clutching the railing. Frank remembered that same posture. 10 years ago, another man gripping the edge, wind tearing at his jacket, fear mixing with anger. He'd shouted back then, too loud, too late. Now he spoke quietly. You think it ends if you jump? Evan didn't answer. Frank took a breath. It doesn't. I've seen what happens after. The people left behind. They keep standing on bridges like this one, wishing they'd done more. That made the kid turn. You don't know anything about me. No, Frank said, but I know the look in your eyes. I used to see it in the mirror every morning. The boy frowned, confused. Frank stepped closer, close enough now that the rain between them felt like a thin veil. I lost someone once. Tried to save him. Didn't make it. Thought it was the end of me, too. The wind howled through the girders. Evan's knuckles whitened on the rail. What stopped you, he asked. Frank's voice cracked just a little. Someone had to, and for the first time in 10 years, he realized he was still that someone. Evan let out a shaky breath. The fog around them began to lift, revealing faint lines of the city's skyline beyond the river. He said quietly, You ever wake up and just not want to start the day? Frank nodded once. More than I'd admit. My mom's sick, Evan went on. Real bad. I've been taking care of her, trying to keep up with bills. Every time I think I'm catching up, something else falls apart. Last week, the landlord raised the rent. Today, she told me she can't breathe right. His voice cracked. I just got tired of watching everything I love break. Frank swallowed hard. The words felt too familiar. I know that feeling, he said. You start to think maybe the world would be better without you in it. Evan's eyes flicked toward him, suspicious at first, then searching. You ever feel that way? Once, Frank said honestly. Maybe twice. But I learned something. The world doesn't need you to be perfect. It just needs you to stick around long enough for things to change. Evan blinked, his shoulders trembling. And if they don't? Frank looked out at the water, voice steady. Then you change. That's how you beat it. For the first time, Evan didn't argue. He just listened. The sound came first, distant sirens, faint but growing. Someone must have called it in. Frank didn't look back. Neither did Evan. The city was waking up behind them. And for a strange, suspended moment, it felt like the whole world had stopped just for them too. You don't have to talk to them, Frank said softly. But you should let them help. Evan shook his head, wiping at his face with the back of his sleeve. They'll think I'm crazy. They'll think you're alive, Frank replied. The sirens grew louder, flashing lights cutting faint colors through the fog. Frank stepped closer until he was right beside him, one hand resting lightly on the cold railing. Step down, he said. Just take one step. You don't owe me anything. Just give yourself another day. Evan hesitated, just long enough for the silence to feel like it might break. Then, slowly, he swung one leg back over the rail, then the other. His shoes hit the metal walkway with a dull, solid sound. Frank exhaled, only then realizing he'd been holding his breath. The patrol car stopped at the far end of the bridge. 2 officers got out, moving cautiously. But by the time they reached the center span, there was nothing heroic left to do. The hard part was already over. By the time the sun broke through the clouds, the bridge was nearly empty again. The officers had taken Evan to the patrol car, one of them giving Frank a small nod. Not of thanks exactly, but of understanding. Frank stayed behind. The rain had stopped, and thin streaks of light spilled across the wet pavement, turning every puddle into a mirror. He leaned on the railing, hands still shaking a little, the taste of cold metal on his palms. He thought of the man from 10 years ago, the one he hadn't reached in time. For years, that face had followed him everywhere. But now, for the first time, it began to fade. Not erased, just gentler. Maybe that's how forgiveness works, he thought. Not loud, not final, just a quiet easing of the weight you've been carrying too long. He poured the last of his coffee over the side, watching the ripples vanish into the gray water below. Then he smiled, small, tired but real. Tomorrow, he knew, he'd still come back here. But not for punishment, just to see the light hit the water.